want to, if you have a Bible and you just want to find the scripture, we'll get to it in just a few minutes, I guess. Genesis 2. God. That's what we're talking about. You know, I guess every church and every city in America this morning is talking about God, whatever that is.
Whatever their version is.
Whatever the version of. Yeah, there's dozens and dozens of versions. You know, when you go into Scripture, and again, we do it here constantly, the Greek for Hebrew for God in the Torah, the first book of the Bible, Genesis. God's mentioned in that first chapter 32 times. And from that, a lot of the Hermetic, especially Kabbalah, is built off of that very fact, that fact that God is mentioned 32 times. And how they do that in Kabbalah, they take the tree, it's what they call in Kabbalah the tree of life. I put it up here many times, and it looks like this. And of course, it's like I have said, I can take the stick man and put the stick man here with this. And that's what the Kabbalistic tree of life is. As a matter of fact, you can go into an Orthodox Jew's house and you will actually see that on the doorpost. That's supposed to ward away what we would call evil or antagonistic energies from your house. From your, you will see that actually. I can remember, gosh, when I left working for Harvey Casper in 75, that's when I had, 75 or 76, that's when I accepted the call to preach. That's, I had a dream, and in that dream, it's like God came to me, and I have called you to be a priest. That was the words that was used, priest. And in my mind, I didn't know a priest from a preacher or a pastor, so they all start with P. So I just assumed they all are the same thing. So I thought, okay. And a very vivid dream, and vivid so much so that even God pointed me to a scripture. But I hadn't read scripture at that time. I didn't know anything about the Bible at all, hardly at all, other than His Bible. And lo, I went to that scripture, and lo, there it was, just as clear as the nose on my face. Okay, so that was my call, that was my confirmation. Well, of course, I discussed it with Connie, and the next day, she wasn't necessarily for that. She wasn't necessarily just dead set against it. And so I thought, okay, the next one I need to go talk to is my mother. And I went and talked to my mom, and she was definitely against it. She said, no, we've not been preachers in our family, I just don't. And her response back to me, jokingly, was, I got you out of jail too many times. You know, I know you can't be a preacher. So anyway, I was a part owner in a tire store here in Dalton, and I sold out with very little extra income that I had. And so I quit, and I began to study Scripture. I spent a whole year. In that year, a little over a year, as a matter of fact, only 14 months, I didn't work a job. I had 3 children, a house, and a mortgage, and I literally studied Scripture for 12, 14, 16 hours a day. I took a seminary course, college graduate course from Dake, and got involved in his ministry and his life during that period of time. And so I had a friend that I had befriended and basically kind of led him to the Lord. He was a paint contractor. His name's Tony Moneymaker. Still to this very day, a really close friend of mine. And so I did part-time painting for Tony. And so Tony contracted and did some paint work to different people in Dalton, like Barney Solomon. Now that name, Barney Solomon, who owned Solomon Industries back then, was a large cotton mill, very successful, obviously Jew, right? With the name Solomon. And I remember, as well as it happened yesterday, I remember working over there on Barney Solomon's house with Alan Kimsey for Tony Moneymaker. We were working together, painting and remodeling his house, and he was a Jew. And that was on the doorpost. Like I said, I remember it as clear as it was yesterday, because we would have to take our putty knife and we'd have to pry it loose. Had little screws, little nails to hold it on. Be on the doorpost. And where do they get that idea about on the doorpost? Well, they get it out of Scripture. And so that symbol right there, that's called the Kabbalistic Tree of Life. And it's also called the 10 Sephirots. 10 Sephirots is points of energy. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now these top 3 points of energy represent what we would call God. Light, life, and love. And in Kabbalah, that Hebrew Kabbalah, that's how these would represent. And so therefore the 7 below it represent the physical body. And so when I do the physical body, I just do it this way. And I did it this way years ago when I was studying the endocrine glands. And of course the endocrine glands is how I got the 7 stickman character. From this, basically saying the same thing. On this, you could just put hands right here and put feet down here. It'd be the same thing. It's just arranging them differently. But in Kabbalah now, I said all that to say this. In Kabbalah, you have 22 points between each one of these and connections. There's exactly 22 to connect. This is called Keter. Keter. I'm sorry, this is called Keter. This is called Malkut. Keter means crown. The crown of the head. That's the top. That's where the brain's at. It means God, okay? That God is the crown glory, right? Malkut is the kingdom. That's the earth. That means the terra firma, or the grounding dimension. That's the lower chakra, if you're looking at the chakras. That would be the lower chakra. This would be the top chakra. So you have these 22 connections. Now, you know, all of this stuff, whether it's Hermeticism, or whether it's Kabbalah, or whether it's Masonry in Jewish, it's all built on this right here. See, in Masonry, you have a 32nd degree Mason. Just like in Kabbalah, you have 32 Sephirot, 32 connections. You take the 22 Hebrew glyphs, and I know this is just a lot of information, you know, but it's information that helps confirm stuff if you know this. If you begin to know this kind of information, you see it, and all of a sudden you make connections. You can connect a lot of dots. So the 22 Hebrew glyphs connect the tree of life, the Sephirot, together to make this character that's called the tree of life in Kabbalah. And none of that's accidentally. Every bit of that is all put together geometrically. We talked about that last year, simply because numbers don't lie. All of these numbers, the 10 and the 22, they don't lie. They all tell the same truth. So in Masonry, if you're going up, you'll go York right, you'll go this way. If you're going up, you go Scottish right, you go this way. It doesn't matter. The key is you get here, the crown. That's the key. So should be in Christianity, if Christianity is taught from the truth or the basis or the root of what it was originally written to be, in other words, what we have in the Bible, it would be the same thing. It would be the Adam Kidmon, the tree of life. And we talk about the tree of life a lot, but we don't never talk about it in that fashion. So I said that to just simply say that in the Torah, 32 times, 10 and 22, 32 times is the word God mentioned in Genesis chapter 1. And so when we say God, we have such a mixed idea. In Christianity, you say God, everybody thinks of an old man or some man character, some figure. That's not true if you listen with a Hebrew ear. If you're listening with a Hebrew ear or Hindu ear or Buddhist ear, they're talking about God. The Buddhists don't believe in an old man figure somewhere out in the sky, some kind of an anthropomorphical guy. Nor do the Hindus, nor do their scripts. None of those. Only in Christianity Hebrew don't believe in that. Hebrew don't believe God is an old man. The Hebrew understands the Elohim more to be astrological than any other way. They understand it to be the 12, as I call it, the 12 powers. The 12 wheel of powers. The astrological wheel with its 12 designs. So the Elohim, E-L-O-H-Y-M, or you can spell it with an I-Y, both ways. It doesn't matter, because this glyph right here is the yod. It can be an I or a Y or a J. Either way, it's the Hebrew yod. So anyway, I want to talk about that more and more and more. Elohim. God is first this. He's first what we would call no thing, or an endless, timeless dimension. Energy, power, etc. Essence. Just, all these different names. All of these are God. And of course, when we break this down, we break this movement, this energy, this power down, we break it down into 12 pieces of the pie, 12 different segments of the wheel. And when we do that, as we do that, we begin to understand.
Did I miss the fact that the 12 and the 10 go together to make 22?
Actually, no. I haven't even gone to the 12 or 10 to get 22. 22 and 10 here go together to make 32. So 32, that's a key number. All of these are. So spell this word is Aleph, Lamed, Hey, Yod, final mem. Now I want to give you, watch this, just 600 is what the final mem, 10 is what the yod represents, 5 is what the hey represents, 30 is what the lamed, aleph is number 1, that's God. So when you add this together, you have 600 and 10 and 15 and 45 and 46, right? 646, is that right?
Yes.
You mathematicians, which if you add that together, you got 6, 4 is 10, 16, right? And when you add that together, what do you got?
7.
Look at that. 7, 7, 7. And of course, if I do the astrological wheel and I show you the torso of the human being, 7. Now, you see, you can find God, Elohim, the astrological wheel, in every number. And that's what I want you to understand. So if you're talking about 2, you're talking about 1. If you're talking about 1, you're actually talking about this wheel of nothing. Or of everything. Because this wheel that we call nothing is everything. It is all of the astrological energy that without that energy, nothing on this planet would be. For instance, if we were to get to the bottom line, the sum bonum, the root of everything on this earth that lives, what would we get to? We would have to go back to the sun, S-U-N. Without the sun, would there be anything here? No. So then, is the sun the life of this earth? Yes, with a multiplicity of mixtures. In other words, if you had the sun, you had no water, would you have life here? No. See, you have to take. So, I'm saying this, if we're telling a story, or we're going to make up a story, then we have to concoct characters in that story, that those characters are symbolic or typology of energies. That would be God. So the Elohim, the number 12 is first mentioned, just exactly like I showed you here. And so what I want you to do, that's number 7. Can everybody say 7? 7. And let's just spell it. I want you to see something here. S-E-V-E-N. And you help me. I fail spelling, so if I spell it wrong, you just tell me I spelled it wrong. Kirby's the teacher, so he can keep me corrected. Genesis chapter 2. I want you to watch something here. And you know this. We know this. But most of the time we don't notice this. I'm going to show you something when we read this that it don't say, that when you read it, you think it does say. Happens to us all the time. Why? Because of a pre-programming that we unconsciously get usually from our parents or well-meaning people. But nevertheless, we get this pre-programming. And we get it early. I mean, really early. And watch this. Genesis chapter 2, verse 1. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the hosts of them. And on the Sabbath day, God ended His work, which He had made, and He rested. Did you notice what that verse 2 says? Let me show you what it don't say. I'll point out what it don't say. And on the Sabbath, that's spelt, Sabbath is spelled S-A-B-B-A-T-H. That's not the Sabbath. Okay? Now, I will guarantee you there's not a religion on the face of the earth that's Christian that would not argue with me and say that is the Sabbath. S-A-B-A-T-H. I said, no, it's not. Look at it real closely. In Hebrew, it's not the S-A-B-A-T-H, Sabbath. As a matter of fact, if you will hold your finger right there, and I want you to go with me to the book of Exodus. Just real close right there. Exodus, chapter 16, I believe. Chapter 16. Everybody found it? Exodus chapter 16 and verse 23. And it says, verse 23, and He said unto them, this is that which the Lord hath said, tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath. You see that? S-A-B-B-A-T-H. That's the first time the word Sabbath is mentioned in Scripture. Right there. In Exodus 16. You won't even find the word Sabbath, S-A-B-B-A-T-H, in the book of Genesis. It is not there. Is there a difference in the Sabbath in Hebrew Scripture, S-A-B-B-A-T-H, and the Sabbath, S-E-V-E-N-T-H? Yes. They don't even spell the same. Now, you ain't never heard that in your whole life, have you? And so yet there you've got wheels turning, you've got your head scratching, you say, well, I didn't know that. You know, not hardly nobody knows that. You know why they don't know that? They never notice what they're reading. Most everybody I know, when they read Genesis chapter 2, and they read the word Sabbath, S-E-V-E-N-T-H, unconsciously, they read the word Sabbath, S-A-B-B-A-T-H, thinking that for some reason that day is different than the rest of the days, not knowing that they're all days. They're just creative energy. Now, I know people don't know that, but there's just a difference. Now, let me do this, spelling these words. The Sabbath is spelled, well, I just spelled right here, underneath it right here. The Sabbath is spelled this way. Sheen, Beth, we're going to talk about Beth, or Va'it, Beth or Va'it, and Tov. 400, 300. The Sheen has 300 value. The Beth has a 200 value. The Tov, which is the last Hebrew glyph of the 22, the Tov has a 400 value. So when you add them together, you got 400, 702, right? 702, which equals 9. So you'll see 9. We'll start. 9 is going to pop up a little bit. 9 actually is feminine universal energy. It would actually be where we would get the idea of Mother God, or the womb called the universe. Have you ever heard these terms? Have y'all heard Mother God, or have you ever heard the womb, W-O-M-B, the womb of the universe? That if it was the womb of the universe, it would be creative energy, right? You follow that? That's what number 9 means. So when you spell this word Sabbath, S-A-B-B-A-T-H, you're actually referring to the womb or the aspect of creative energy. Okay? Now that's the Hebrew word Sabbath, S-A-B-B-A-T-H. But now, what about the word Sabbath? I don't even know if I wrote it down in here. Obviously, I didn't. I want to show you that word Exodus. If you see that in Exodus 16:23, Sabbath, S-A-B-B-A-T-H, which is this word here in Hebrew. Now, as you go back with me to Genesis chapter 2 again, same verse, Genesis chapter 2 again, it says, and on the Sabbath, S-E-V-E-N-T-H, that's the day, the Sabbath. Let's see if I have a note of this word. Sabbath, yeah, here we go. Let me just make this note for you. Sabbath. Shin, Beth, Yod, Ayin, Yod. You see those two words? You see how many of you have ever spelt steel, S-T-I-L-L, or steel, S-T-E-A-L? They sound alike. Are they alike? No. Look at these words. They're not even spelled close. There's just a tremendous difference. Sheen, Beth. Yeah, they have the two first singular glimpse to give that sh sound. Okay? Just like steel and steel. Sheen, Beth, Yod, Ayin, Yod. Wow, well, let's do some gematria on this particular word. Let's just see what we got with this one. You have 300, you have 2, you have 10, you have 70, and you have 10. So you have 300 and 70, 80, 90, 392. 392. How much would that be? 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14. What does that equal? 5. 5. What is 5 in Hebrew? That's the hay. Do you know what the 5 in Hebrew hay? It means feminine energy. It means the blueprint or the design of feminine energy. Well, does it have a similar meaning to number 9? Number 9 means universal or divine energy or the womb of the creation.
So yes, they have similarities.
They have similarities, just exactly like steel and steel sound alike but ain't alike. Just exactly like this, 7, S-E-V-E-N-T-H, and Sabbath don't even sound alike, but do sound alike. Definitely not spelt the same. You see? Now, I wouldn't care to have an argument or a dialogue or a discussion with the Seventh-day Adventists to try to get them to see this difference and get them to see the Sabbath is not mentioned at all in the book of Genesis, period. It's just not there. And to try to make the seventh day different than the other 6 days, the fact that they are all aspects of creative energy, it would be a difficult argument. You know why? Because their mind's already made up. Their mind's already looking into a wrong direction, and you can't redirect that. You have to be open-minded to see this. If you're not open-minded, you can't see it. I mean, sad to say it, you just can't see it. Now watch this. Genesis chapter 2. Now look at this. I said you won't find it spelled this way, Sabbath. But watch this right here. And by the way, if I look at these words in Hebrew and I break these two words, these glyphs down, and I get to the roots of their meaning and what they actually mean, here's what I would come up with the Sabbath. Actually, I would just simply mean, it means to place something or especially one's confidence or trust in. So if I'm looking at the Sabbath, S-A-B-B-A-T-H, That's how I would break that word down in Hebrew, and that would be the meaning of it. To place your confidence or your trust in. Well, can you place your confidence and your trust in the womb of universal energy and expect it to create without a doubt? If we know how to do that, without a doubt, we can. But then when we look at the Sabbath, actually the word Sabbath, S-E-V-E-N-T-H, means peace and freedom. So the crown and glory of the stick man, the crown is peace and freedom. You don't get that out of Seventh-day Adventists. All you get is legalism and bondage. Or any religion, period. Or any religion. You get bondage. That's what they boil down to. But when you look at these words, now again, chapter 2, verse 2, on the Sabbath, S-E-V-E-N-T-H, God ended His work which He had made and rested. You see that word rested? That's the same identical word that's in Exodus 16 for Sabbath, S-A-B-B-A-T-H. Same word, but it's called rest. It's called rest. And the only reason it's called rest is because it's a place of repose where you have confidence and trust in what you have put out. Not belief. See, there's just a huge difference between something you believe and something where you have a place where you're confident and you trust that. You can believe all kinds of stuff and then the belief won't serve you. And we all have been there with that whole mindset, that whole mentality. I believe this or I believe that. And have you ever had something that you believed didn't happen? But you believed it would. But didn't happen. But you still believed it would. Now what was that? That's called disappointment. How many of you have been disappointed? Well, I have a lot. But if I have confidence and I have trust in something, I might get disappointed in it, but bless God, I'm still hanging on to it. You understand what I'm saying? And the chances and most likely the reality that it manifests are great. Definitely great. Something I wrote early this morning, really early. The Bible is a book or a compilation of books that were written mostly as allegory and myths. And I have to make an emphasis. Every time I say the word myth, I hear the background of other people and the false definition of the word myth. Generally, the definition of religion for the word myth means a tale that's a lie. It's not true. It's a myth. It has no truth whatsoever. Actually, just exactly the opposite is the truth. A myth is the greatest story or allegory that can exist. And it's chock full of truth. And the whole purpose behind the myth is the truth that's in the story is to ignite the energy of God that's in you to the story and therefore motivate you and move you in the direction of your trust. Wow. Now, why we have lost that beautiful understanding of a myth is based in religion, because they don't want you to understand these stories. They'd rather you think of these stories as history and literal. Therefore, it's something God did with them or God did then, but not now. Because there's not an Abraham alive today. There's not a Moses. There's not an Elijah. There's not a David. But now they were then. No, they were mythologies. Moses is alive in you. David is alive in you. Elijah is alive in you. See, we have all of these energies of these stories as God in us. And they are there waiting on you and me to tap into them and ignite their energies for our greater good. Hallelujah. So, a myth, which is a fabulous story, which was designed when it was told correctly, to arouse the energy or the frequency or God, Elohim, to arouse that in you into a marvelous work or a miracle of creativity to instruct humankind or man. Now this is the rest of some of the things that I wrote here. Because if you can have this, you do have this. I don't care who you are on the face of the earth. It doesn't matter who you are, your nationality, what you know, what religion you belong to, or what religion you believe in. You have this in you because it's the very deposit of God in you, and it's confirmed by the breath you breathe. Now if you don't breathe and you stop breathing, then you don't have this. Okay? So, otherwise, if you're breathing, and you're still inhaling and exhaling, you have this. You don't know you have it, but you have it. And in every inhale and every exhale, in that is creativity, power, energy, no matter who you are or no matter what you believe. But if we do not have proper instructions, this is what else I wrote. We don't have the instructions to raise your innate God ability, man or woman, doesn't matter, to raise this gifting and this potential. It's as if you didn't have it. So what's the key? Right here. The key is actually in the instructions. Why is it important to receive instructions? Because you have something that you don't know you have. You have ability you don't know you have. We have power. We have essence. We have phenomenal things. And it doesn't matter if you're a Wayne Dyer or you're a Bruce Lipton, and you're telling it not necessarily in Hebrew or in biblical stories, but you're telling people that they have a greater potential than they realize they have. That's the true gospel. The false gospel is that you're going to go to hell because you're wicked and corrupt. Listen to the difference in the stories of these people. They're not condemning people because they made a mistake or they didn't make a mistake or because they did this or they did that. They went left when they should have went right, or they went right when they should have went left. They had good or they had evil. They were wicked or they were bad. And it got nothing to do with that. And when you go to the four Gospels and you look at the story of Jesus, you realize Jesus was not condemning anybody for anything that they were, whether it was Nicodemus or whether it was the Mary Magdalene, the tax collectors, the wicked, the corrupt. Notice, as a matter of fact, he called him the friend of what? What was he called the friend of? Was he called the friend of the Pope, the great preachers, the priest, the high priest of the... No, he had nothing to do with those people. He had nothing to do with religion. You know what he said to those people? He said, you have the keys, but you keep them locked up and you won't give them to the people. You won't let them understand who they are. What are the keys? The keys are the instructions to the power and ability you have in you. So what did they call Jesus? The friend of publicans and sinners. Who were publicans? These were crooks.
The man on the street.
And what if they told you and me? They convinced you and me unless we are goody two-shoe to the max. Y'all understand? Is goody two-shoe is that a word? That's a southern goody two-shoe. Just simply means you walk in the line.
Did you follow and study Wayne Dyer? When his teachings really took off to a whole other level, he actually found where his father that had abandoned them, that he hated, was buried, went to that cemetery with the intent to pee on that grave, and Spirit checked him. He actually forgave his father at that point and left with that non-judgmental attitude. And if you
actually, he fell on his knees there and found his father's grave in Louisiana, fell on his knees and actually began to weep.
And went there with the intent to pee on that grave and curse that.
Yeah, because he hated it. He hated it because of the...
And that's when his teachings, which had been successful, but that's when they took a whole different direction. The judgmentalism left.
You know, and I'd say that's a key for all of us when we can quit judging And good Lord, don't we need to, that's a prick, isn't it? That pricks me. It's so easy to get caught into, like we were doing, or we're going to judge them Iraqians or whatever they are. They're just as deceived as these Baptists down here. Oh God, Brother Lynn, I did a little thing. I called you back the other day. I meant to. And the reason I called you back was Annie had sent me a little brief clip of the Big Bang Theory guy and his little Shelton. Little Shelton. And little Shelton was at the Sunday School Baptist room, and he said, he told the Baptist, the preacher there, he said he's just going to start his own religion and he's going to call it mathology.
That's a great.
It is so hilarious. It is so good. And I swear, wow, it should be a prick in all religions' face to say maybe we have been too critical and judgmental. Maybe our representation of an all-loving God, knowing the beginning from the end, all-powerful, maybe our presentation of Him is not correct because we're presenting somebody that you can't please. And if you don't walk the line, if you're not a goody two-shoe, then you ain't going to make it and you're going to burn in hell. Such a gross error.
Again, the great part of that show, that's a spin-off of the Big Bang Theory.
Right.
That was last year's #1 new comedy. They're putting those thoughts out there in front of people. Shows that are being watched by the masses.
Is it all this year again?
Its second season was this year, yes.
Oh, see, I have not seen it. I need to find that and watch it. It was so cute. I laughed and I thought, wow, there's a lot of
You
truth
can
in
just
that.
go online to CBS Weekly, and the next day after the show's aired on Thursday night, you can watch Big Bang.
You can watch it
Young
over.
Sheldon and watch it the next day just on your computer.
Wow. Okay, well, let me finish reading this and see if I can tie these ideas together. Because I'm coming back to this, it's instructions. My heart just really bleeds for all of us, me and my children, my grandchildren, and I've said at the time we may be a small core group, but my God, we should be touching mankind, society. People perish for the lack of what? Knowledge. People are held in captivity. Why? They just don't know who they are. Instructions. Instructions are key. Very important. So all of the fabulous stories, back to what I wrote this morning, all of the fabulous stories in the Bible are symbolical, typological figures of the divine energy or essence or power that is latent in each and every one of us on this beautiful globe that we call the earth. In other words, I'm quoting an aphorism from Hermeticism. As above, in other words, the astrological wheel, the wheel of powers, the Elohim, so below. In other words, so on earth. That's the same thing. So anyway, that's something I wrote early this morning, and I wanted to read you also something from an author of mine that's a favorite, Alvin Boyd Kuhn. I just really love this man. I love him more. The more I read from him, the more I love him, and the passion that he had. And, I mean, he's just phenomenal. Listen to this. This is from a book that he wrote. It's a small booklet. I call it a book. It's a very small book. It's called The Root of All Religion. That's the title of this. Science could not know that they were the description of the working of one of nature's fundamental archaea or laws. One indeed which sustains the whole order of organic being in its linked interrelationship. It is the law. Here we're talking about law. I'll talk about this law just a little. It is the law of nature that has remained entirely esoteric in religion and utterly unknown to science. It is the key to the entire evolutionary enigma, the answer to the great unsolved mind/body problem in psychology and biology. It is the kernel of all religion. And what is this crucial law? It is the modus by which the living energies on one plane of life are related to those on the planes above it and below it. As Greek philosophy expressed it, the energetic essence of any one plane or kingdom served as body to that of the plane above it, but as the soul to that plane below it. Higher energies, by which is meant those of more rapid vibratory pitch or shorter wavelength, use lower forces to give them body and instrumental form, and on the other hand, lower forces look to higher ones for the ensouling principle. This involves the necessity of a natural linkage of the energies of two, everybody say two, two neighboring planes in one, everybody say one organism. All right, this represents one organism of the whole universal power, or this Hebrew glyph that we call Aleph, number one. The number one is a symbol. It's not God, it's a symbol that represents God. It represents this one energy. But this one energy, as I said, one is many. And many is one. It's like you're going to find this in every number, especially 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 12. All these major numbers are referring to one. And that one is always referring to that thing that's called no thing, because the no thing is everything, and therefore they don't dare try to apply it to any one thing. Hello. And so here's what he says. He said this involves the necessity of a natural linkage of energies of two neighboring planes in one organism. And now listen to this little phrase he made. This is a powerful, powerful little phrase. He says incubation. Y'all understand what incubation is? We're going to look at incubation in the Bible. Incubation of spirit in the womb of matter is the law of nature. You can chew on that. Incubation. If the spirit incubates in the womb of a woman for 9 months, it will build a baby. In other words, soul spirit. Soul/spirit. Why? Because it has that design. It has that ability. And therefore it does. So that one principle in this called law of nature, and the law of nature works off, the reason I put this little squiggly thing in the middle, 3.5, 1, 2.
You bumped him up.
I got my squiggly in the middle, in the wrong middle, haven't I got it in his throat shot, which is okay. Let me put it this way. Because that little squiggly, the reason I did it that way, it represents this thing we call time, or two-dimensional world. The time of the reality, or the two-dimensional world where things are created, where we have creative aspect and creative abilities. So the incubation of the spirit, or Elohim, or these divine powers, is what creates the child or the baby in the womb. Go with me now to the book of Genesis, the 1st chapter. I want to show you incubation because it's here. I mean, it's just simply right here. It's a part of the pattern. It's a part of the idea of God. Genesis 1:2. It says, and the earth was without form and void, tahu bohu. Actually, that is misleading in the English, very misleading. The word was actually in Hebrew is not was, it's actually the word become, to become. When you hear the word was, you think of something past tense and not no more, right? But if you hear the word become or becoming, you don't think of something past tense. You think of something in motion that's happening, right? It's becoming. And so that's a gross error of the Hebrew right there. It should have been, it's becoming. And notice what it says in verse 2. It says, in the earth, becoming, not without. That means it don't have. But tohu and bohu simply means it was filled with mass creative ability. it was like a cesspool of creation. It was stirring with creative energy. It's almost like, to me, the way I see it, is if I see a pool of water that is filled with little minnows and all kinds of green algae and different things, and the water is just churning and being stirred by the movement of all these minnows. The creative power and ability is unlimited. The potential that's there is unlimited. It's becoming. So when you read it that way, and I hear people, they translate that waste and void. That's how they translate. Boy, that is just so bad wrong with tahu and bohu from Hebrew. So here the earth was becoming, it's becoming this creative energy. It says in darkness, that's dark matter, that's light. It was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved. You see that word move right there? In Hebrew, that word moved is rakaf. Rakaf. And I want to put that word up here on the board, and I want you to see this word, rakaf. Rash. That's a 200 value. Cha'at. Cha'at, that's number 8. That's the symbol of infinity or movement. And that glyph right there, that's the final glyph. You have 5 finals that are added to the Hebrew alphabet. And that final, this is called the final Phe. So it takes the Cha'at, that's the creative design, infinity. It takes it to its highest level of cosmic energy or cosmic creativity. Now that's the word that we see right here for moved. Now, we have a word in English that equals this word, and it's called B-R-O-O-D-E-D, brooded. Have you ever seen a hen brood on her eggs? Have you ever seen that? I grew up on a farm, and I've seen that a lot. And I know there's a lot of times when some old hens, you don't mess with her, but she's sitting on her eggs. She's brooding. She's incubating. It's exactly what she's doing. She's incubating. She's growing her babies. That's exactly what's happening in the womb of a woman. She's brooding that. She's growing that. She's incubating that thing. This is exactly what it's saying the Spirit of God does. So what's the Spirit of God doing over the creation? It's brooding it. It's giving it its creative power, creative aspect. Look at the gematria on this particular glyph. 800, 1008, right? Huh? Look here, 9. Same thing that we have over here, 9. Same thing. So the energy there is the energy of the universe for creation and for creative ability. Now in closing, I'm just going to, let me just real quickly say these few things just to kind of close down. The one, which I've got the circle, but that circle is a symbol. So when I look at this, if I look at that circle, I don't just see a circle now in my mind, okay? Now maybe that's all you see, and if that's all you see, fine. What instructions they're going to give you is, what can you see in here? Well, I can see everything. I see the potential for everything. So what I see is I see the 12 astrological wheels, vision, in my mind. And so as I begin to see the one becoming the many, but here's what I want to start out with. First, I want to start out with just this right here. I want to see the one becoming 2. So here's the Hebrew aleph. That's number 1, okay? That's this circle right here. And then this is the Hebrew Beth, or we call it Beth, or Va'ith. And that is number 2. So what does the Beth mean? The Beth is where the number 1 has viewed itself as opposites. So it created 2. And how did it do that? How did it do that? It did it this way right here. With the sine wave. What does the sine wave give us? Time. So what does time give us? It gives us the ability to measure space in distance. Because if you don't have that, you can't measure anything. So So it doesn't matter how well you know numbers or how well numbers can be accurate without that right there. So you take the circle, the egg, and you split it in half, and you have two. That's the Beth. Now, here is where ancient mythologies, and especially Greek mythology, begins to give us important principles. And actually, Jamie said something about this, gosh, 3 or 4 months ago, and then Bruce commented on what she said about this particular word. And so, the most misunderstood word in Christian literature is this right here. Logos. And that word, Logos and Christos. Two most misunderstood words. Now, I wrote these just exactly like I want them, because they're going to represent the Logos and the Christos are going to represent these two, Beth, the word Beth, in the Hebrew Bible and the Torah, the very first glib that's mentioned there in verse 1, chapter 1, verse 1, is that glib right there, Beth. The reason it is because this book that we call the Bible, especially the Torah, and especially the book of Genesis, is about this glib, this number. It's not about this number other than this number 1 becoming this number 2. Now you can take these two numbers, the first two glibs in the Hebrew alphabet, and build the whole scripture on them. Because it is. And it's represented in these two Greek mythological numbers. This is Greek mythology. Greek mythology is what Christianity drew on. Why? Because Greek mythology predates Christianity by hundreds and even thousands of years. So the Logos was not a brand new word introduced to Christianity. So that if Jesus says, I am the Word, Logos, then he wasn't saying anything new. When they were writing about that, they couldn't be saying anything new. Why? That's ancient Greek mythology, the Logos. Same thing's true with the Christos. So I want you to see these, and I want to explain to them what they mean. They were both ancient Greek mythological stories about different characters, and there were many characters put in Greek mythology that represents these two words, Logos and Christos. But yet, what did Christianity do? Christianity told you and me, gave us the idea that both the Logos and the Christos was one historical character. Therefore, when you see the word Logos or Christos, in the root of your mind, you're thinking of one historical character and not yourself. Therefore, you miss the whole content of these words and of this whole idea of Beth or two. You completely miss it. And it's not somebody's fault. I'm not going back and trying to point at the preacher or it's not fault, it's just religion. I mean, if you go back, let's go back to the Nicene Council, the Nicene Creed. Now, that's where we really got messed up. Constantine had a purpose. Constantine had a design in which he was really getting us off the track, and he did it successfully. He had to kill a lot of people to do it, too. He had to kill a lot of people to get it done. So what does the Logos mean? I want to show you here's what the Logos means. The Logos means, it means 7. It means 7 in vibrational form. So the Logos means 7 sounds. There's not a word that you speak out of any language on the earth that's not formed from 7 sounds.
Music is 7 basic notes.
We're going to come to that. So we're going to come to that because this is symmetry, okay? Go with me real quickly to Psalms 19. Psalms 19, verse 1. It says, the heavens declare, the astrological symbols declares the Hebrew word kafar. It actually means to speak, to prophesy. The glory of God and the firmament shows His handiworks day into day, utters speech. In other words, every day, this logos, this vibrational energy, is speaking. And look what it says. Day into day utters speech, night into night shows knowledge. There is no speech nor language where this voice, this logos, is not heard and understood. Why? It's vibration. So it doesn't matter if you go to Rabba Sele, Korba, it doesn't matter, or if you're by Rashid, by Ra, it doesn't matter what language, any language you speak, it is a mixture of vibration and breath. That's God. That's God. So the Logos is not a historical character that was. You are the Logos. That not only is it the 7 vibrational energies, it's the 7 colors, the basic colors. Not only is that, it's the 7 musical tones. It's the root, the sunum bonum. So the one, in its ability to create, creates from the Logos. And then the Christos, that's another word. The Christos actually is referring to the oil, the energies, the fluids that's produced by the 7 endocrine glands to life, this thing we call a body. So, in mythology, in ancient mythology, when you start to talk about creation and the creative aspects of God, and you use the term the Logos and the Christos, you're talking about the stick man. You're talking about yourself. We're talking about how we live, how we move, and how we have our being. And it's all these energies of God that's moving us, living us, and doing us. So then that's how the two is one. It becomes, the two is you. And you're not divided. In that phenomenon, you're two, but you're one, and you're not divided. And that's beautiful. So I'm going to, next week we're going to go into these two and how they're using different characters in Scripture, and how they're not just in the Scripture, but in other ideas or ideologies, other religious, what we would call different beliefs. Okay.